Dan of Vagabond Buddha?
Still early morning.
She doesn't speak very loud even when it's not morning, but so we're in the main train station here in Bangkok. That's Thai. Quit talking. And we're going to see the bridge over River Kwai, which is a movie that's famous in the U.S. That where during World War II the Japanese used Thai people, all sorts of captured prisoners, including Allied, American, British soldiers, to build a bridge over River Kwai, and many were killed. It was a very brutal scene, but anyway, you can do a day trip to see this bridge that's built, and it's one of the top tours from Bangkok. And you're joining us today. So you're going to want to take the number 909 train, which is on platform 5 at 6:30 a.m. Now that's an early start. Our train's arriving. Well, the train was full, so we actually have separate seats.
Yeah, just in front of each other. We don't sit together.
We don't sit together.
The train is 120 baht for round trip. And you don't want to overnight over there, so what can I do? I want to go to the waterfall. The waterfall has a big fish that will eat all your dead skin.
เพราะฉะนั้นใครอยากจะซื้อก็ซื้อขาไปได้เลยนะครับสำหรับพวกกระเป๋านะฮะกระเป๋าสัมภาระติดตัวอะไรที่มันไม่จำเป็นก็ไม่ต้องเอาลงไปนะครับไม่ต้องเอาลงไปเอาไว้บนรถได้ไม่หายนะครับผมวิ่งกับวันนี้มาหลายปีแล้วก็ไม่เคยหายนะครับและอีกอย่างหนึ่งสถานีนครปฐมเราก็มีกล้องวงจรปิดแล้วครับ
They have a salad that I want.
So this is the first stop on our train tour to River Kwai. This is the Chedi temple. This is from the 3rd century before Christ. And it's the tallest stupa in the world. And it's the most famous temple in Bangkok. Buddhist temple, that is. 3rd century BC, that's pretty impressive. It's the oldest stupa also in Bangkok, and it has relics from Buddha that were said to be brought over from India by some monks. So it's a very important Buddhist temple. Anyway, let's check it out. This is Dan of Vagabond Buddha. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, could you please like it, subscribe, or comment. Any of those would increase our rankings in the search engines, which would help our business greatly. Thanks so much in advance. So this is the second stop on the bridge over River Kwai train tour. These rounded parts are the parts that were built during World War II by the Japanese. They had about many thousands, I don't know how many, actually helped build this railroad. It's called the Death Railroad. But 200,000 people died building this. Most of them slaves from Malaysia and Thailand. And there were also some Allied soldiers that were here helping engineer them build the bridge. And it was done during World War II when the Japanese had possession of this part of the world. There was a movie done, of course, The Bridge Over River Kwai, where the English were portrayed, the English officers were portrayed as being helpful to the Japanese, and many were interviewed at the time the movie was released, and said that wasn't the case. The British fought the Japanese tooth and nail in terms of, it was at gunpoint that they built this bridge for the Japanese. And the Japanese didn't dispute the 200,000 dead that were killed building this railroad here. And the only thing the Japanese did dispute was they said that the Japanese engineers were portrayed in the movie as incompetent, and that they were very competent people. That was their only objection to the movie. And so here we are. This is the bridge over River Kwai. You can see the two square parts in the center there. Those were built later. This bridge actually was only up for about 2 years. Towards the end of World War II, about in that time frame, and the Allied bombers bombed it because the Japanese were using this railroad to take ammunition and food to their Japanese soldiers that were fighting in Burma at the time. And so after all of the heartbreak and death, it was only running for about 2 years before the Allied bombers knocked it down. During part of the reparations that the Japanese had to pay when they surrendered, part of their treaty was to rebuild some of the mess they had made, and part of it was to rebuild this bridge that had been bombed by Allied bombers. And the two center parts there, the two square ones, were built post-war after the Japanese had surrendered. And I don't know the details of that, whether the Japanese built it or just paid for it or what have you, but that was part of their reparations. And so this is the bridge over River Kwai. There was also a wooden bridge near, I don't know which direction, it was bombed at the same time. They built redundancy so the trains could run even if one bridge was knocked out, but the Allied bombers knocked it all out in one day. So, all right, on with our tour.
อยากจะรู้ว่าเฉลยถึงเขาลำบากขนาดไหนพวกผมเป็นกองทุนสร้างนะครับสมัยก่อนไม่มีรถแมคโครไม่มีรถเคนนะครับเชือกสาวลอกขึ้นมานะฮะตรงนี้เสียชีวิตเยอะที่สุดเลยนะครับ1 ชีวิตต่อ 1 ไม้หมอนนะครับ
So the train stops and you take a little walk. We'll put a map for you on the webpage. Just click the link below this YouTube video. But Soyuk Noe Falls is the next stop on the tour, and it's supposed to be worth the 14-minute hike from the train station. So we're going to check it out. So along the walk, you'll see this Japanese locomotive. This is the kind of train that was running at the time of World War II. Just keep walking up the path. Want some pictures, Changhui?
No.
Woo-hoo! So you just keep walking up the trail here. Probably not going to miss it. So you just keep walking up the trail until you see the obvious. There it is. The waterfall. bridge over River Kwai tour from Bangkok. There's at least 6,900 Allied soldiers buried here. When the Japanese took prisoners in World War II, the Allied forces, mainly here Australian, Dutch, British, and American, they made the prisoners build this death railroad that the Bridge over River Kwai movie was made about. And luckily the Japanese allowed just the Allied forces, not the other local people, to keep track of where all the people were buried. They were buried along the tracks as they died. There's almost 7,000 Allied forces here, British, Dutch, Australian, and about 100 Americans that were died and murdered and starved to death building this railroad. The American soldiers, 88 to be exact, were returned to the United States after World War II. The rest of the Allied forces still lie here. The British lost the highest percentage. They had about 31,000 soldiers, and over 6,000 of them died during building of the Death Railroad. The Malaysians, or as they were called at the time, Malay, which was a British colony known as Malaysia today, they suffered the highest casualty. They had about 75,000. Well, originally were paid to work on the bridge, but eventually became slaves. And of those 75,000, 40,000 of them died, murdered, or were starved to death by the Japanese. And this is the last stop on our tour. Might be worth just let you know a few names here. Unknown soldiers, unknown. Here we go. This one is Private W. West, the Leicester Regiment, August 5th, 1943. Always in my thoughts. The ones that they could pull from the side of the tracks and put in this graveyard. Almost 7,000 of them are here. So World War II wasn't happy for anyone, even of course the Japanese. It ended poorly for them. At the time, the U.S. Government determined that the war would go on for a number of years to defeat the Japanese, because they were such ferocious fighters. They made a determination of how many people would die if they dropped the nuclear bombs on Japan, and got approval from the United Nations to drop, I don't remember the order, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They dropped one bomb and told the Japanese, we're going to keep dropping bombs on you until you surrender. The Japanese didn't believe them, and so they dropped one more bomb on the second city. And those two cities, about 120,000 to 150,000 Japanese perished. And they were civilians mostly, because they were dropped on cities. And the Americans said, we've got as many of these as you want, we'll keep dropping them, and Japan finally surrendered. Although there were only 2 built at the time. And that ended World War II for the Japanese. And so those are the only 2 nuclear bombs that have ever been dropped on humans. Many have been tested. And many believe the horror of that, of that many people dying in a few seconds, is what the fear of that is which prohibited war since the dawning of the atomic age. So anyway, this is the last stop on this tour, and thanks for watching. Again, everything I talk about there's here in our trip to Bangkok is on, just click the link below this video and you can find out how to take this tour, places to eat, places to stay, things to do in Bangkok. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching our video. Come to Vagabond Buddha, check out our Retire Cheap reports, also our retirement planning and all the information you need to learn how to retire internationally for less money than it costs at home. Come check us out.